She texted her mate during emergency heat. The Al-PH King answered in 5 minutes. The forest was alive with whispers that night. Shadows swayed like living beings, brushing against the trees as if they carried secrets from a time long forgotten. The moon hung low and silver in the sky, spilling its cold light over the thick canopy, and the wind carried the scent of earth and rain. In a small cabin at the edge of the cursed forest, Leora paced the worn wooden floor. Her heart pounded, and a strange warmth spread through her chest, growing into a fire she could not control. She had felt it before, but never so sudden, so urgent. Her emergency heat had arrived without warning, and she was alone. She sank into a chair, pressing her palms to her face. Her breaths came in sharp, shallow bursts. "Why now?" she whispered, the words trembling in the quiet room. She had always feared this moment, the moment when her body would demand something she could not give. Not here. Not like this. Her thoughts flickered to him. Kale, the Alpha King. The name burned on her tongue, though she barely dared to speak it aloud. He was her mate, bound by a destiny older than either of them, yet he was far beyond her reach. Kale ruled the cursed kingdom with unmatched authority. His presence both feared and revered. He was strength incarnate, yet something in him called to her, an invisible tether that had drawn her since the first time their paths crossed. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. It was forbidden to contact the Alpha King directly. Even thinking of it was dangerous. But desperation drowned caution. She typed the words and hesitated, staring at the screen as if it held the power to summon a storm. "Kyle, I need you, please." "I'm in danger." Her thumb hovered over the send button. 1,000 warnings flashed through her mind. The wrath of the king, the disapproval of her pack, the humiliation if anyone discovered this. Yet the fire inside her would not wait. With a shaking breath, she pressed send. The forest outside seemed to grow still, as if the trees themselves had stopped to watch. Time stretched, each second a drumbeat of panic and longing. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and strangely alive. The cabin felt too small, too quiet, as though the walls themselves could not contain the storm raging within her. Then, almost impossibly fast, a message appeared on her screen. Her heart leapt, nearly stopping from the force of it. "I am on my way." 5 words. 5 simple words that carried the weight of the world. Her pulse surged, a mixture of relief and fear coursing through her veins. The Alpha King was coming. She did not know if she should be terrified or overjoyed. The forest outside groaned under the weight of a rising wind. Branches scraped against the cabin walls, and the shadows seemed to twist, pressing closer. Leora stood, wrapping her arms around herself as her gaze darted to the window. The forest was never safe at night. Not for an Omega, not for anyone. Dark creatures, remnants of old curses, prowled unseen, their eyes glinting in the dark. She shivered, but it was not just the cold. It was anticipation. It was longing. It was fear. A sudden knock shattered the tension. A single sharp rap that seemed to echo through the cabin. Leora's breath caught. Her pulse raced. She opened the door slowly, peering out into the night. There, standing in the silver glow of the moon, was Kale. His presence was immediate and overwhelming. The wind seemed to bend around him, the shadows parting in recognition of his power. His eyes, sharp and commanding, softened slightly when they met hers, and something in her chest unclenched. Just a little. "Leora," he said, his voice low but carrying authority like thunder under the clouds. "Why did you call me?" I couldn't control it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The heat came suddenly. I didn't know what to do. I was afraid." Kale's gaze softened, though only slightly. "You are not weak, little one," he said. "But this is dangerous. You know the rules."
"I know," she said, swallowing hard.
"But I had no one else to turn to. I needed you. I need you." His presence filled the small space, and though he had barely stepped into the cabin, it felt as though the walls themselves were bowing to his command. Leora's heart thundered, her body responding to him in ways she could not resist. The fire of her emergency heat flared, and she pressed her hands to her chest, trying to calm the storm. Kale took a step closer, and the air seemed to vibrate with his power. "You are mine," he said simply, a statement that carried both warning and promise.
"And I will not abandon you, but you must trust me."
"You must let me lead." Leora nodded, swallowing her fear. She had never been more aware of her vulnerability, yet never had she felt so safe. He reached out, his hand brushing a strand of hair from her face, and a shiver ran down her spine. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice now carrying the weight of command. "The forest is not kind to those who wander alone at night. I will guide you back." They stepped out together into the forest, and the night seemed to shift around them. The trees bowed slightly under Kale's presence, the shadows retreating as though acknowledging the Alpha King's authority. Leora stayed close, her heart still racing, her body still aflame, but she trusted him. She had no choice but to trust him. The journey through the forest was tense. Every sound, the snap of a branch, the rustle of leaves, made her jump. Kale's hand never left hers, steady and grounding. Yet there was a magnetic pull that made her lean closer to him despite herself. He was her strength, and she felt it coursing through her. "Why do you hesitate?" he asked softly, sensing her fear. I am afraid of being unworthy," she admitted, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Of being too weak, too insignificant." Kale's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You are neither weak nor insignificant," he said. "The strength of an Omega is not in hiding from fire, but in embracing it. You are fire itself, Leora. And fire can be controlled, guided, and even wielded as a weapon when it is united with its mate." Leora's breath caught at his words. There was a poetry to them, a truth that resonated deep within her. She had never felt so seen, so acknowledged, not even by her own pack. Kale's gaze held her in a way that was both protective and consuming, and she could feel the invisible tether between them tightening. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the forest, dark and menacing. Leora froze. Kale's posture shifted instantly, protective and alert. Shadows shifted unnaturally among the trees, and a pair of glowing eyes reflected the moonlight. "Stay behind me," Kale ordered, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the forest floor. Leora obeyed, pressing close as Kale stepped forward. The creature, a twisted shadow of a wolf, larger than any natural beast, lunged toward them. Kale moved with astonishing speed, blocking the attack and throwing the creature back with a force that made the ground quake. His presence radiated power, and Leora could only watch, awe and fear mingling in her chest. The creature yelped and retreated into the darkness, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. "You see?" Kale said, his eyes softening as he turned to her. "This world is not kind to those who wander alone. But with me, you are protected. You are mine." Leora nodded, her voice caught in her throat. She wanted to say more, to express the longing and fear and relief that churned inside her, but words failed her. Instead, she allowed herself to simply stand close, to feel the rhythm of his heartbeat, to absorb the strength that radiated from him. They continued through the forest, and as the moon climbed higher, Leora realized that the fire within her was no longer just a source of fear. With Kale by her side, it felt like a spark that could be guided, a storm that could be tamed. But even as relief and longing mingled in her chest, a shadow flickered at the edge of her vision. Something unseen watched them, patient and hungry. The forest was never truly safe, and destiny, she knew, had only just begun its reckoning. When they finally emerged at the edge of Kale's territory, the Alpha King's eyes softened for the briefest moment, betraying a hint of vulnerability beneath the storm of power. "You survived the night," he said. "But this is only the beginning. The forest will not forget, neither will those who wish to harm you or me." Leora's heart raced. She knew she could not turn back. She could not deny the bond that tethered her to Kale, nor the fire that had awakened within her. All she could do was step forward, into the unknown, and trust that the Alpha King who had answered her call would guide her through the darkness. And in the shadows behind them, a pair of eyes gleamed with silent intent, hinting at challenges yet to come. The journey through the forest had been tense, the night alive with unseen eyes and whispered warnings. Leora clung to Kale's side, feeling the warmth of his presence calm the fire inside her. Every step he took radiated authority. Every movement commanded respect, not just from the creatures of the night, but from the very air around them. Kale moved silently, yet his power was impossible to ignore. Shadows seemed to bend away from him, and the wind carried the scent of his strength, sharp and unyielding. Leora's heart raced as she followed him, each step both terrifying and exhilarating. She had never felt so small, yet so protected. "You must remain close," Kale said softly, his voice low but carrying over the rustle of leaves. "The forest is not kind, especially to those who attract danger." "I'm not afraid," Leora whispered, though her voice trembled. "Not with you here." Kale's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Your courage is noted, little one, but courage alone will not protect you." The shadows shifted again. This time Leora caught movement, a flicker of dark shapes, fleeting and silent. The hairs on her neck rose. She swallowed hard, unsure whether to feel fear or fascination. Kale's hand brushed hers, steadying, grounding, a silent promise that she would not face this alone. They walked for what felt like hours, the forest thickening, the moonlight dimming beneath the dense canopy. Leora's mind wandered, torn between awe and anxiety. She studied Kale without realizing it, his sharp jawline, the power in his broad shoulders, the intensity of his eyes that seemed to pierce into her very soul. Yet beneath that power she sensed a quiet, almost hidden vulnerability. A man burdened by the weight of his throne and the lives he was sworn to protect. "Why did you come so fast?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Even though you are the Alpha King." Kale's gaze softened, and he looked down at her with a mixture of stern authority and something more intimate, more personal. "Because you are my mate," he said simply. "No rule, no curse, no danger can keep me from you. You sent for me, and I answered. That is all that matters." Leora's chest tightened. She had always believed she was alone, that destiny had overlooked her. Yet here he was, the Alpha King, standing before her, not just as a ruler, but as the one tied to her soul. The fire inside her flared, and she bit her lip, trying to contain it. Chaos sensed it immediately. His eyes darkened, the air around him thickening with the pull of his power. "Control it," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Soon, you will understand how to wield it without being consumed." The forest seemed to close in around them as they approached a clearing. Moonlight spilled over a set of ancient ruins, moss-covered stones that had seen centuries pass. Leora felt a shiver of recognition. Something about the ruins resonated with her, as if calling to a memory she did not fully understand. "This place," she began, hesitant. "It feels familiar." Kale's eyes narrowed, his expression cautious. "It is an old shrine," he said quietly. "Long abandoned, but not without power. Stay close to me. Some things in this forest remember those who walk here." Leora nodded, keeping close as he led her through the ruins. The air hummed with energy, subtle but unmistakable, and Leora felt her own powers responding. It was strange, frightening, yet exhilarating. The heat inside her seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the shrine, and she pressed her hands to her chest, trying to calm the storm. Kale noticed immediately. "Do not resist it," he said, his hand brushing against hers. "Your power is not a curse. It is a gift. Learn to trust it, and it will protect you. Learn to fear it, and it will betray you." Leora swallowed hard, her gaze meeting his. "I don't know if I can," she admitted. "It's too strong. Too much." "Strength grows in control," Kale said. "And control comes with trust. Trust me. Trust yourself. That is how we survive. Not just the forest, not just the curse, but everything the world throws at us." Her pulse raced, and she nodded. She wanted to believe him. She needed to. The forest around them seemed to pause, the shadows holding their breath, waiting. Suddenly, a scream shattered the night. High, sharp, and desperate, it cut through the trees like a blade. Leora stumbled, her heart hammering, and Kale's grip tightened on her hand. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice steel under the storm of fear. The Alpha King moved forward, and the shadows seemed to recoil from him. From the darkness emerged a figure, cloaked in black, moving with unnatural speed and precision. Leora could see the faint glint of a blade, the flash of eyes that were not fully human. Her breath caught and she froze. Kale stepped in front of her, his presence radiating an unshakable authority. "You will harm her? You will answer to me," he said, his voice carrying the weight of kings and centuries. The ground seemed to tremble under his feet. The figure hesitated, the shadow around it flickering. It was clear that Kale's power was not just for show. The Alpha King's energy pulsed outward, and even the forest seemed to bend to his will. Leora felt a strange sensation, a connection forming between her and Kale that went beyond the physical. Her fire, her heat, her power, it responded to him. She felt it calm, controlled, guided by his presence. For the first time, she realized that her fear could be transformed into strength when she was united with him. The shadow attacked, and Kale moved with precision, deflecting it with a wave of energy that seemed to radiate from his very being. Leora watched, heart in her throat, as he fought not with cruelty, but with controlled power, ensuring that the creature would not be destroyed unnecessarily. Finally, the figure retreated into the darkness, dissolving like mist under the moonlight. Kale turned to Leora, his eyes intense and unwavering. "Do you see?" he asked. "With control, with trust, you are never alone. You have power, yes, but I will guide it. We are stronger together." Leora nodded, her chest tight with emotion. She had never felt so seen, so understood. Her fire had been overwhelming, terrifying, and yet in Kale's presence it felt like a spark that could be tamed, a power that could be wielded. They continued through the forest, the ruins fading behind them. Leora clung to Kale's side, her mind a swirl of gratitude, awe, and fear. She was alive, protected, and yet aware that the danger was far from over. At last, they reached the edge of Kale's domain. Before them stood his fortress, a towering structure of black stone, crowned with silver spires that gleamed even in the faint moonlight. The walls were adorned with carvings of ancient battles, symbols of power and protection, and banners that fluttered like whispers of history. "This is your sanctuary," Kale said, his voice softer now. "But remember, even here, the world does not forget. There are those who would see you harmed, or worse. You must be vigilant. You must be strong." Leora's gaze swept over the fortress, awe and fear mingling. She had imagined it in her dreams, but nothing could prepare her for the reality. "It's magnificent," she whispered. "But it feels lonely." Kale's expression softened, a rare vulnerability flickering in his eyes. "Lonely, yes, but no longer for you. You will not be alone again." The doors of the fortress opened, and shadows moved within, servants and guards alike bowing as Kale entered. Leora followed, her heart pounding, aware that every step she took inside was a step deeper into a world she had only glimpsed in legends. Yet even as relief settled over her, a cold shiver ran down her spine. From the highest tower, a faint shadow watched them, patient, silent, waiting. Not all eyes were friendly, and not all threats were gone. Leora pressed close to Kale, trusting him, but aware that the forest had only been the beginning. The real challenges, both of power and of heart, awaited inside the fortress walls. And as the night deepened, a distant echo whispered across the courtyard, carrying a promise and a warning. Destiny had already begun weaving its web, and no one, not even the Alpha King, could see its end. The fortress of Kale, the Alpha King, rose like a dark crown against the night sky, its black stone walls gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Within its halls, shadows moved as if alive, shifting under the weight of centuries of secrets and power. Leora stepped carefully, her senses heightened. Every echo of footfall, every whisper of wind reminded her that she was now in a world ruled not only by strength but by magic, legacy, and unseen threats. Cale walked beside her, steady and unyielding. The warmth of his presence was a constant anchor, a promise that no matter the dangers lurking in the fortress, she was not alone. Yet, the corridors were vast, cold, and imposing. Leora could feel the tension that permeated every stone. She knew she had stepped into a place where every glance could carry judgment, every silence could hide conspiracy. "This place," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's alive." Cale's eyes narrowed, scanning the dimly lit hallway. "The walls remember," he said. "They remember those who ruled, those who betrayed, and those who sought power. You must move carefully. Not everything that smiles is friendly." Leora swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. She had seen the danger outside the forest, but here, the threats were subtler, woven into the very air she breathed. The servants and guards bowed as they passed, their faces respectful but wary, eyes flicking towards Cale as if reading his every thought. Leora felt exposed, yet under Cale's gaze, she also felt protected. They reached a chamber at the heart of the fortress, a room of stone and shadow, yet warm from the hearth burning in the corner. Cale gestured for her to sit. She obeyed, still trembling from the events of the forest and the journey to this stronghold. "Rest," he said, his voice softer now, carrying a rare warmth. "You've endured much tonight. The heat, the danger, and the forest itself. You must regain your strength." Leora nodded, though she could not sit still. The fire within her, the residual energy of her emergency heat, pulsed like a living thing, reminding her that her bond with Cale was more than instinct. It was power, desire, and destiny intertwined. Cale knelt beside her, studying her with a seriousness that both comforted and unnerved her. "Your energy," he murmured. "It is stronger than I imagined." "The emergency heat, it is not just a call, it is a signal, one that carries both danger and opportunity." Leora's hands trembled in her lap. I didn't know what to do. I've never felt it so strongly." It was overwhelming. Cale reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "That is natural. The bond between mates is not always gentle. It is fire and shadow, storm and calm. You cannot resist it, little one. You must learn to trust it, and trust me." His eyes held hers, intense and unyielding. Leora felt the tether between them strengthen, a thread of invisible energy connecting them, pulsing with each breath. The fortress, with all its shadows and history, seemed to fade around them. Here, with Cale, the world narrowed to this moment, this bond, and the fire between them that could not be denied. Hours passed as Cale taught her to focus, to calm the fire within her. His hands guided hers, his voice steady and commanding. Leora felt a strange exhilaration as the energy that had once terrified her now responded to his presence, swirling in patterns that were both controlled and alive. She realized with awe that she was learning not just to survive, but to harness the power that was hers by birthright and destiny. "You see," Cale said, his voice low, "power without control is chaos, but power united with trust, your power with mine, becomes unstoppable." Leora nodded, feeling her confidence grow with each passing moment.
I think I understand," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I feel—"
Calmer, stronger. "When I'm with you," Cale's lips curved in a faint smile, rare and fleeting. "Good. That is only the beginning. There are forces in this kingdom, in the forest, that will test us. Both our bond and our strength will be challenged." Before she could respond, a servant entered the room, bowing deeply. "My king," he said, voice low, "there is news from the Northern Guard." A group of outsiders was spotted near the eastern border. They carried weapons and something else, something unnatural. Cale's expression hardened, his hand tightening on the edge of the table. "Show me," he commanded. The servant led them to a window overlooking the northern grounds. Leora followed, her heart pounding. In the darkness, figures moved, fast, purposeful, and unnerving. Their forms flickered in and out of the shadows, as if cloaked in some magic she did not understand.
They are not human,
Kale said softly, almost to himself.
they are corrupted.
Shadows twisted by old curses or someone's malicious will. Leora's chest tightened. What do we do? Kale turned to her, his eyes dark and serious. We protect and we prepare. This fortress may be safe for now, but no place is beyond reach. You must remain alert. Your power, your bond with me, will be our greatest weapon. Even as they spoke, Leora felt it. The pull of destiny, the whisper of unseen forces watching them. The fortress, grand and imposing, seemed suddenly fragile under the weight of the challenges that approached. Shadows shifted in corners, silent observers of a story they could not yet understand. Over the following days, Kale guided Leora through the fortress, teaching her to harness her power and navigate the intricate web of politics and protection that surrounded them. She learned the names of guards and servants, the history etched into the walls, and the subtle signs that marked allies and hidden threats. Yet her thoughts often returned to the bond that had drawn them together. Every glance Kale offered, every gentle brush of his hand, sent shivers through her. She realized that the connection between them was more than instinct. It was choice, trust, and unspoken understanding. And though her heart longed for him, she also feared the consequences of her desires, the dangers that their union might invite. One night, as the moonlight spilled into her chamber, Leora felt the stirrings of her power again. The fire pulsed, a reminder of the bond that tied her to Kale, and she could not ignore it. She rose, moving to the balcony that overlooked the northern courtyard, where shadows danced and whispered. Kale appeared behind her, silent as the night itself. "You feel it again," he observed, his voice gentle but firm. "Yes," she admitted, turning to meet his gaze. "It is stronger. I feel it in every part of me." He stepped closer, the space between them charged with unspoken emotion and power. "Good. That fire is part of you. Part of us. Fear it not, little one. Learn from it. Let it guide you, not control you." Leora nodded, her pulse racing, her heart aching with the longing and trust she felt for him. She could sense his power, his presence, as if it had become a part of her very being. Together they were a force greater than either could imagine. But even as they stood there, united in quiet strength, a faint movement in the courtyard caught Leora's attention. A shadow, darker than the night itself, glided along the stones, unseen by others. Her instincts, honed by the fire within her, screamed danger. Kale noticed her change in posture immediately. "What is it?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "Something watching us," she said, her eyes narrowing. "It is not one of your guards. It moves differently." Kale's expression darkened, his lips pressing into a thin line. "Then our trials have only begun," he said, his tone carrying the weight of command and warning. "The shadows do not rest. The forest, the fortress, they are alive with eyes that seek to harm us. We must remain vigilant." Leora swallowed, fear and anticipation mingling in her chest. Yet even as dread coiled within her, she felt the tether to Kale tighten, stronger and more undeniable than ever. She realized that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. Fire and shadow, mate and alpha, united in strength and trust. And yet, as the moonlight glimmered on the fortress walls, a whisper traveled through the night, carrying a warning they could not yet hear. Destiny had begun its weaving, and the threads of power, love, and betrayal were entangling faster than either of them could foresee. The fortress lay under a heavy, starless sky, silent but for the distant rustle of leaves and the soft echo of footsteps. Inside, Kale moved with precision and calm, every motion deliberate, as if the shadows themselves obeyed his will. Leora followed closely, feeling the tether between them tighten with each heartbeat. The fire within her, the power of her Omega nature, was no longer a storm of panic, but a controlled, shimmering energy, ready to respond to his guidance. Tonight, they were not just mates, they were allies, united in purpose and in destiny. But the castle walls, strong and ancient, could not hold back the forces gathering outside. A curse had awakened, one older than either of them, and with it came dangers that sought to test their bond, their strength, and their courage. "This is the shrine," Cale said quietly, his voice carrying across the courtyard as he led her toward the center of the fortress grounds. The stones glimmered faintly under a pale, eerie light, the air humming with the weight of magic and history. "It is where the curse begins, and it is where we must end it." Leora nodded, gripping his hand. Her pulse raced, but she felt steadier now. With Cale beside her, she knew she could face whatever darkness awaited. The bond between them had grown beyond mere instinct. It was trust, courage, and understanding. Yet even in that strength, a shadow loomed. Something, or someone, watched them from the tower, waiting for a moment of weakness. As they approached the shrine, the ground trembled subtly. Dark mist began to rise, curling and twisting like living smoke. From within it, shapes emerged, figures cloaked in shadow, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. Leora felt a pang of fear, but Cale's grip on her hand steadied her. "Do not falter," he said, voice firm and commanding. "This is your trial. Together, we are stronger than any shadow." The shadows advanced, circling them like wolves hunting their prey. Leora felt her powers respond instinctively, energy flaring from her in pulses that danced across the courtyard. Cale's alpha energy surged to meet hers, a wave of force that pushed back the darkness. The two powers intertwined, creating a shield of light and fire that held the shadows at bay. "You see," Cale said, his voice steady amidst the chaos, "this is what I meant. Your fire, when united with mine, can overcome even the deepest darkness. Trust it. Trust us." Leora's chest swelled with determination. She focused, letting her heat flow, her bond with Cale guiding the energy. Together, they were unstoppable, the light of their unity pushing the cursed shadows backward. The figures hissed and retreated, but the largest of them, a twisted silhouette that seemed to breathe malice, stepped forward, challenging them. Cale's eyes narrowed. "It will take both of us to stop that one," he said, his hand tightening around hers. "You are ready, Leora. Trust me." "I trust you," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. The shadow lunged, moving faster than anything natural. Cale met it with a surge of his alpha energy, holding it back as Leora focused her omega fire, weaving the two powers together. Sparks of light flared, illuminating the night with a brilliance that made the shadows shriek and recoil. Leora felt the bond between them strengthen with every heartbeat, every pulse of energy. Yet the shadow was cunning. It struck at them, not with brute force but with whispers, illusions that sought to turn them against one another. Leora saw visions of Cale abandoning her, of the fortress crumbling, of herself powerless and alone. Fear stabbed her heart, but she remembered his voice, his touch, the tether that bound them. "No!" she shouted, pushing the illusions away. "I trust you. I trust us." Cale's gaze met hers, and in that moment, the illusions shattered. Their combined power flared like the sun breaking through storm clouds, and the shadows screamed, retreating into the darkness. The mist dissipated, leaving the shrine bathed in a soft, peaceful light. Leora stumbled slightly, exhausted but exhilarated. Cale caught her, holding her steady. "You were magnificent," he said, his voice low, filled with awe and pride. "Stronger than I imagined." "You are not just fire, Leora. You are light, courage, and power combined. And together, we are unstoppable." Her chest heaved, her heart still racing, but for the first time she felt a deep, unwavering calm. She was no longer afraid of the fire within her. She had learned to wield it, to trust it, to let it guide her in harmony with Cale. But the night was not yet over. From the shadows of the fortress a figure emerged, the same one who had watched them, cloaked in darkness and intent. It was clear now that this being had orchestrated the events, sought to test the bond between mate and alpha, and to claim power for themselves. Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Leora and the figure. "You will not harm her." "You will answer to me," he said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. The figure laughed low and chilling. "You may be powerful, Alpha King," it said, "but can you control destiny itself? Can you protect her from what has been set in motion?" Leora felt a surge of determination. "We will face it together," she said, her voice strong, unwavering. The fire inside her flared, and she felt Kalail's energy weave seamlessly with hers. Together, they radiated strength, courage, and love that no curse could extinguish. The shadow attacked, a swirl of darkness and malice. Kale and Leora moved as one, their powers interlocking, energy flowing between them in a dance of light and fire. The figures struck again and again, but each blow was met with their combined strength, each attempt to break them failing under the force of unity and trust. Finally, Kale moved with precision, channeling both their powers into a single, brilliant surge. The shadow shrieked, its form unraveling under the brilliance, until it dissolved completely, leaving only the faint echo of wind. Leora sank to her knees, exhausted, but Kale knelt beside her, holding her gently. "It is over," he said, his voice soft, filled with relief and pride. "You were incredible. Fear did not control you. The fire within you is yours to wield, and it is unstoppable when united with mine." Her hands trembled in his, and she felt a warmth that was both comforting and thrilling. I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice trembling. "You believed in me." Kale's eyes softened, rare vulnerability shining through his alpha strength. "I always believed in you. You are my mate. You are not alone, ever again. We are bound by more than destiny. We are bound by choice, trust, and courage." Leora's heart swelled. For the first time, she felt completely safe, completely understood, and completely connected to someone who matched her fire with his strength, her courage with his protection. They had faced darkness, deception, and fear, and had emerged stronger, united in both power and heart. The dawn began to break, spilling pale light across the fortress walls. The shadows that had haunted the night faded, leaving a calm, almost magical stillness. Leora looked out over the courtyard, feeling a deep sense of peace. The curse had been confronted, the shadow defeated, and the bond between mate and alpha had been tested, and had held strong. Kale stood beside her, watching the first rays of sunlight pierce the darkness. "The world will still test us," he said softly, "but tonight you have proven your strength, and our bond has proven unbreakable." Leora smiled, feeling the warmth of both fire and love within her. "Then we face whatever comes together," she said. Kale nodded, a rare, gentle smile gracing his face. He took her hand, raising it to his lips in a gesture that was both possessive and tender. "Together," he agreed. For the first time in her life, Leora felt completely whole. The forest, the danger, the fear, and the fire all had led her here, to this moment. And though the horizon would always hold challenges, for now, she and Kale stood as one. Alpha and mate, fire and shadow, destiny and choice intertwined. And in the silence that followed, a faint wind whispered through the fortress, carrying with it the promise that while challenges may return, the bond they had forged could withstand anything. The Alpha King and his Omega had faced the darkness, and they had emerged victorious, not just in power, but in heart.